Finance meeting for Tuesday, October 13th. Let us begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I believe, Robert, you're going to stand in with the flag.
Yes, how about that?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. I see mostly names I recognize. I don't think we have any members from the public for public input. Okay. Any correspondence?
No correspondence.
No correspondence. That moves us to approval of the minutes. As the minutes were distributed earlier, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes as submitted. Yikes.
So moved.
Got a second?
A second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any. All vote. Those in favor of the minutes as submitted, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The Foster sisters, are you yeses?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, that brings us to the first substantive issue, I guess, or maybe the next agenda item. That's the Park and Rec truck purchase from Capital Non-Recurring. Matt, is this to you?
Yes, this is to me, and what you have in front of you is the fourth quote. We've been trying to get this in front of the Board of Selectmen and then Board of Finance for several weeks now, and we actually this works out tremendously in our favor because the first iteration was a $36,000 truck, which had 5,000 miles on it. It was a demo. To purchase a new truck was $44,000. We lost the used truck because we just our process takes a certain amount of time. She came up with a second used truck, and a new truck is always better, of course, but she was trying to save the town money on the Capital Non-Recurring. The second truck got sold out from under her. We didn't get a deposit on it fast enough, and lo and behold, today the Ingersoll folks came up with a brand new 2020 Silverado for $27,477. It's not on the lot here, but they're having it shipped in. It's at another dealer in elsewhere in the state of Connecticut. This is exactly what she was looking for. I really can't account for the tremendous cost difference in the new truck going from 44 down to 27. There was a rebate that is in place now that we qualified for. So that's the number. The Board of Selectmen had previously approved a truck not to exceed $36,900, I believe, but this is the final quote for a cash purchase. And as opposed to buying a used truck, and this is a truck that we expect to get 10, 12, maybe even 14 years out of, like the last one. So this is an outstanding deal. This is on the state bid, by the way. The state approved pricing. So I would submit to you that in as much as the Board of Selectmen has already approved up to 36, you can easily approve this for 27,477, and we will be on our way.
Okay.
So that is my request on behalf of the Board of Selectmen this evening, and I thank you very much.
Good deal. Any questions for Matt?
Matt, do you think if we wait another month, we'll get a better deal?
I have a hard time thinking so, but who knows? Anything, this is a weird year. It's 2020. Who knows what happened?
So Matt, I'm sorry, go ahead, Dee.
No, I was just going to ask Matt. So Eileen feels like at this lower price point, she's getting everything she needs. We're not sacrificing any utility of any kind.
Oh, there might be something like floor mats or something, but no. In terms of the utility and what it's designed to do, not at all. Thank you. Thank you for the question. That's a good.
And Matt, you confirmed, right, that this is the state bid, so this is the best we're going to do in that regard.
That is correct.
Okay. All right, well, any more discussion? If not, entertain a motion to approve the request of the Board of Selectmen to acquire the truck as described in the material that we have in front of us for an amount of $27,477.
So moved.
Second it.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 All right. I think that's unanimous. I did not hear Karen, but I'm assuming she was a yes.
Yes, aye.
Good deal. Thanks, Karen. Okay, so that's unanimous. All right. Thanks, Matt. Thank Eileen for us, please.
I will. Thank you very much. And by God, we're going to get this thing bought before it walks again.
Fair
Thank
enough.
you. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. All right, next up, we've got a couple visitors to the meeting. Want to welcome Mike and Janice to tonight's Board of Finance meeting. We asked Mike and Janice to come to present to us, as we've talked about on a number of occasions. We, the Board of Finance, working closely with the Comptroller's Office, have been trying to monitor kind of the 4 pillars of risk that we have in this very unique fiscal year 2021, right? Those areas of risk, pillars of risk, are revenues, expenses, capital items, and then fund balance. We thought that it would be helpful to have the folks from the Economic Development Commission come on in and tell us what they're seeing as far as the economy is going and how the economy is perhaps likely to impact some of those risk pillars, especially revenue and expenses. So again, thank our presenters and turn it over now to Mike and Janice.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to give you a short presentation in what our view of the current situation is for our town. What we're going to report on tonight is somewhat of a mixed bag. We have clear issues here in town with unemployment being a considerable issue from where it's been in the past. Our lowest back in 2019 was 2.9% unemployment for the town, and right now we're at 7.4, so it's considerably higher, but yet we're doing better than the state overall. Our hospitality and our retail industries have borne the brunt of, in our local area, of a lot of the restrictions that the virus has brought upon us. And that is a great concern as we go forward in terms of what goes on. There's the number of businesses that have closed, but at the same time, we are seeing a lot of interest. Like many of you, you may have noticed the number of out-of-state plates that seem to be driving around our town more frequently. Well, very good news on a residential real estate side, and also very good news on the commercial real estate side, particularly in the area of industrial. You know, good reports both out of Clark Park as well as Berkshire. So like I said, mixed bag. Janice is going to take us through the presentation that we have put together, and certainly feel free to ask questions as we go along. Go ahead, Janice.
Great, thank you so much. Deanne, you can go to the next slide. So as Mike was stating, in order for us to really get a good idea of what's going on locally, we do look at what's going on with the state. So I'm just going to take a couple minutes real quickly just to give you an update of where we are in terms of the state of Connecticut and how that impacts us here in Bethel. So as Mike stated, Connecticut's unemployment is at 8.1% currently. This is as of September, and that's 34th in the nation. Our highest was 10.2 in July. And you can see that Bethel's unemployment is currently 7.4%. And our high was 9.8% in June. Dion, next slide, please. So as of September, the state of Connecticut, as well as Bethel, we're facing some business challenges. You can see some of the challenges besides cash flow that are outlined to the right. But there's 2 points of interest that we pulled from this information. 81% of small businesses have seen their revenue decline compared to last year, and 56% anticipate going out of business within the next 12 months. Dion, next slide. Although that seems pretty bleak, we are seeing some good news, and we are seeing that 84% in the state of Connecticut businesses have recouped their economy. What we're seeing here is that Connecticut is one of only 8 states that has seen an increase in real estate listings compared to 2019, and we'll touch on that later in the presentation. But you can see here that Connecticut is trending better than what we're seeing in the United States. Next slide, Dan. So in the state of Connecticut, CBIA is the Connecticut Business and Industry Association, and they did a survey in April 2020. And what they saw was the leisure and hospitality, other services, and retail have suffered the biggest impact, with restaurants, bars, hotels, entertainment facilities, gyms, hairdressers, and salons who were either forced to close or had restricted operations. And you won't be surprised here to see that 99% of businesses were impacted, 24% of businesses were closed, 82% saw a decline in revenue, and 71% needed immediate cash flow assistance. Based on the survey, Dion, next slide. Based on the survey and what we were seeing from the state of Connecticut, especially the 71% of businesses that identified needing immediate cash flow, the Economic Development Office for Bethel, we focused our efforts on business financial assistance and ensuring that businesses knew what programs were available. We did 2 surveys, and our second survey and our last survey was on June 2020, and you can see that approximately 92.86% of the businesses that had applied for the business, 92.86% of the businesses that had applied and answered our survey, and that 92.86% of that 92.86% had received assistance. So what we were seeing that a lot of businesses that had applied for the program, once they felt educated to do that, had received assistance. So that was really good. Those were really good results that we had seen from our local Bethel businesses. Dion, next slide, please.
And Janice, just when the slide is flipping, that assistance, was that primarily federal assistance or state assistance or both?
Yeah, really federal assistance. So there was a state program that some of our businesses have received in the beginning, but the funding was very minimal. Most of the funding that they received was through these 2 federal programs that you'll see here, the Payment Protection Program and the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, which were both federal programs. So between April and August 2020, Bethel businesses, 538 received loans, and that represented over $30 million. So this really helps our small businesses. However, there's still a lot of uncertainty, and many businesses are still counting on additional financial assistance, which we have not heard to this day if the federal government is going to be offering. So yeah. As
a comment to Janice's point, early on when these programs were available, and it was primarily the PPP, and also as Janice mentioned, the disaster loans, and there was state money that was available as well. What held many people back was the communications. When these programs rolled out, there was not a great deal of definition behind them. They were literally making the rules, rolling the programs out. But I will have to say that our local banks, as well as the SBA, and I attended so many of these webinars with various politicians and various heads of SBA, and did overall did an awesome job of pushing out the programs to help people that needed it mostly. And I have to give credit to Janice because on the local town side, she was regularly communicating to all our businesses about the programs and what you need to do. And many of these small businesses, for them, this was kind of the Wild West because they never had to deal with some of these types of things. Nobody had to deal with some of these. So we effectively did a good job at the town level of communicating to our businesses and looking at the results of 93% of the businesses getting that support. It's proved to be extremely beneficial to so many businesses.
Yeah, and as Mike stated, they came out with the programs, but they didn't come out with the guidelines to go with the programs. And then as they started getting through some of the guidelines, the program was changing pretty much daily for months. And even when we're looking at the forgiveness for the PPP program, it's been going on for months and they just changed some of the guidelines just yesterday. So it's ever evolving. There's a lot of communication that has gone out from the state and other state agencies, but it was a lot to go through. So I think the real benefit that we were able to provide these businesses was to go through that information and parse out what was important and what was not important and get that information to them as quickly as possible. Okay, Dion, next slide, please. So we already touched on unemployment, but there's some data here that you can take a look at. So basically in June of 2020, we saw a high of 9.8% unemployment. Prior to that, we were seeing a declining unemployment. And as of August 2020, we are at 7.4%, which is trending below the state of Connecticut, which is currently at 8.2%.
And Janice, that's the latest available information, August?
That is, yes. Mm-hmm.
Any idea when September might be available?
It'll probably be available at the end of this month. And so I'd be happy to update that as soon as we get that and send that out to you as well.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. Okay, next slide, Dion. So in terms of residential development, this is Courtney Martin, who is a local real estate broker here. And she states the market in Bethel has seen a dramatic increase in sales over the past 5 months, and in some areas a value increase of 5 to 10%. The biggest challenge is the lack of inventory for the influx of purchasers. This is further causing prices to go up by multiple offers. Although it has slowed down a bit in October, the continuing low rates and purchasers moving from more urban to suburban areas, this could go on for some time. So from August 2019, if you compare August 2019 to August 2020, we've seen an increase in property sales, year-to-date sales, median sales prices, and we've seen a decrease of 8.7% in inventory. Dion, next slide. In terms of commercial real estate, Mike Struna and Chris had put together a quote for me, and they've said, we've seen a significant increase in activity in Bethel, primarily in industrial space. We are seeing even more demand than we did prior to COVID. We also see a lot of investors looking for properties. We believe the increased activity is due to the flexibility of industrial spaces, the influx of New Yorkers moving to Connecticut and bringing their businesses with them, and businesses that are thriving due to the pandemic. There is a minor amount of activities for small retail spaces on Greenwood Avenue, and we see very little to no activity in the office market. So as you can see here, these are property transfers that we track from January to September 2019. We had 8 commercial property transfers totaling $11 million. From January to September 2020, we've seen a total of 9 transactions at about $14 million. So we are seeing, we're not seeing a huge change and maybe a little bit of increase in those commercial transactions. In terms of retail, we're seeing a slight decline. Office, we're seeing a slight decline. Clark Business Park, we're seeing an increase. And Berkshire Corporate Park, we're about the same. Dion, next slide. So in terms of price per square foot, industrial has remained about the same. Retail has decreased slightly, and for office, which there's little to no activity, people are looking to spend less. I put together some numbers here in terms of our inventory. Currently, as of October 2020, we have 12 available commercial properties, which is about 98.4% occupancy. And that represents about 122,000 square feet that are currently available in Bethel. We have 3 sites that are available. These are properties that haven't, they don't have a building, they haven't been built on yet. And that represents about 130 acres. I just want to note that 122 of those acres are Blue Jay orchards. So we really don't have a lot of commercial sites that are currently available. And we're also not seeing a lot of commercial inventory as the numbers show here. And the proposed expansion of Clark Business Park, we do see as an opportunity for Bethel because it will provide us at least 4 new lots with about 17 acres. So that would provide us the ability to attract 4 new businesses at a minimum to Bethel. Deanna, next slide, please.
And Janice, I guess I'd always heard,
Yeah.
so, who knows if it's accurate, but that Blue Jay orchards in a slightly different category, right? That there are deed restrictions
Yeah.
to keep it farm. I don't
It's a
know if
farm.
it's farming or is it farming? Yeah. So
It's farming, yeah, and it has to stay as that use.
I see. So why, if that's right, why do we include it in the 130? It seems to artificially inflate the number.
Well, only because it's on the market. So I just track properties that are currently on the market, and that being one of them. And so that's why I did notate that there, because it does look as if we have more acreage than we do for commercial development.
Got it. Okay, I got it. I didn't realize I'm
Yeah,
slow
no.
to the uptake. That
No, it's a
in
good
the future.
question. It's a good question. Thank you. So in terms of new and terminated business, from January to September 2019, we had about 40 new businesses. And we're looking at 39 businesses as of September 2020. So we're not seeing a huge change so far in terms of new businesses. But we do have some known terminated businesses. And just to provide you with a little background here, when a business starts with us, they fill out a trade name certificate. So that allows me to track our new businesses. When they decide to terminate, they're supposed to also fill out a termination certificate with the town, which doesn't always happen. It probably doesn't happen 90% of the time. So I really track these manually based on the businesses that I know and based on the terminations that we do receive. So as between March and September, we have 8 new businesses that have terminated, and they're listed there. And we have 2 businesses that have moved. The good news here is that I'm currently in negotiations with a prospective owner for Bethel Cinema, which is one of the ones listed here. The Littlest Angel is now the Little Crystal Shop. So although we lost that business, we did have another business that came into that space. And the Meeting House is now going to be Michael's. So we did lose them, but there is another business that is going to be going into that space. So that won't be a vacant space for us. Yeah.
I just do want to mention, we have much more than 8 businesses that have gone under. In my building in Clark Park alone, in the last 6 months, we've had 2 companies go under, and that's just one building. Now, the good news is we have 2 companies that are looking to move in before the end of the year. And once again, that's because Clark Park, because of the industrial space, is advantageous. So we don't capture the good data on what business goes under, since most people going under don't think that they're going to need to file any paperwork with the town, which there's no penalty that I'm aware of if they don't. So
Got it.
Right. Thanks, Mike. Next slide, Dan. So in terms of the grand list, we've seen growth of about 1.2% annually over the past few years. And we, have identified that we do feel there are some risks to the grand list given the pandemic. Mostly small businesses, retail, food services, and businesses that were forced to close or had restrictions in their operations. But we do think there are some opportunities to the grand list as well. Residential is a really obvious opportunity. Any businesses that were considered essential businesses, we're seeing in the medical and the health businesses that they're growing and expanding based on the pandemic, just as an example. Industrial, there's such a need for industrial. And I'm getting calls every day for people looking for industrial space, which leads us to the Clark Park expansion, which would provide those 4 lots for industrial and light manufacturing. So we do see those as opportunities that we have. And based on those 2 and what we are seeing, we do believe that our opportunities, our grand list opportunities may offset our risks, but there's really no way of knowing that. We can just base it on what we've seen and kind of the data that we've been pulling. But, if something changes over the next couple months, we could see more small businesses close. If there's if there's some sort of vaccine, we may see nothing and we may see businesses expand. But based on what we're seeing now, we think that it may be, a net between the losses versus the what we will be obtaining.
Just as a comment on the Clark Park, for those that are not aware, we have approximately a $625,000 bond request in with the state. They participated at a rate of 50% of the cost so far, with all aspects of the development of where we are with the lots. These lots that we've been, the commission's been working on, unfortunately, I wish it, not quite like the private sector. It's taken us about 5 years to get to this point, okay? But we have everything in place. We're shovel ready. We're waiting for the bond commission in the state. Hopefully we're going to be on the agenda at the end of this month, but we don't know. That would essentially, at some point, once we have the state money secured, we'll be coming back to the Board of Finance to discuss the other half of the, 625 plus 625 would be the town side. But those are 4 lots that right now, at least on what we can see, would be very much in demand given the need for more industrial space.
Great, thanks, Mike. And just a few more slides, just summarizing, Dion, thanks. In terms of business transformation, we've seen businesses make fundamental changes in how they have conducted their business in order to adapt. So we've seen business adaptation, and I've listed some things that we've seen businesses do. Change in product offerings. We've had businesses that have shifted their product offerings, such as hand sanitizer and plexiglass shields. And we've also seen a consumer shift to local commerce, which we plan to continue to promote moving forward. Dion, next slide. Thanks. So after 6 months of what we consider crisis management, we've shifted to crisis recovery. And I won't go through all the things here, but in terms of crisis management, we looked at state and local surveys. We also have weekly business calls since the pandemic started to really do an assessment of how we can support our businesses. We've increased communication, we've assisted in PPE. We looked at the regulations to see what changes we needed to make to support the businesses. And then we focused a lot of our efforts on business promotion. And next slide, Dion. Thanks. So in terms of moving forward, we have defined that we are in recovery, and we are focusing on 3 areas: helping businesses in order for them to survive, supporting the Phase 3 executive orders and filling the void of supporting small business needs that were previously supported by the Bethel Chamber of Commerce. They have moved to a full volunteer organization. So I've been helping support those businesses, and I do see that there will be a need moving forward. In terms of assessment, there's a DECD survey to businesses that should be completed on October 7th. We're going to look at the results of that survey, and then we will follow up with a survey locally based on what we see on that survey and from our weekly business calls to do an assessment of what we need to do moving forward to support businesses. We will develop a plan. We will look at the regulations to see if we need to make any modifications there. And then we will continue, we will identify what we need to promote these businesses. And we will do that moving forward. And so that's all I have. Mike, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I mean, that's, like we said, it's, my sense is we have a mixed bag of information. Certainly, we are very concerned with the hospitality industry and what's going on there. We're concerned with unemployment. The good news is that the risk, which I know everyone on the Board of Finance is concerned with, I'm somewhat optimistic that our grand list is going to kind of be okay. I mean, right now, between the residential growth and the industrial demand, they're all positive signs. We're losing businesses, but we're getting replacement businesses back. So I wouldn't go out and start spending all of our money, okay? But I would not, I don't feel like we're on this call to inform you from our perch of an impending disaster.
Good to hear. Board of Finance colleagues, questions?
So obviously, the pandemic has devastated some business sectors, and yet it has provided unparalleled opportunity to other sectors. From what Mike has said in your presentation, Janice, it seems like at this point in time, the feeling is that Bethel is kind of in a neutral zone in terms of impact. And of course, depending on how long this pandemic is going to continue to make an economic impact, is that what your feeling is that we're going to kind of continue to be neutral without any real growth, but no real devastation?
Yeah, I think that's, from my point of view, I think that's absolutely accurate.
Fair statement. I agree.
Other questions for Mike and Janice?
It was a good update. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was very
Yeah.
helpful.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Good.
We may need you all to come back in another 3 months or so, and hopefully there's a shift positively. But if it's not a positive shift, just for another update.
Yeah,
Sure.
absolutely. I also update the commission monthly, so I'll continue to forward those on to you, and it'll provide some of that information as well.
Yeah, and Janice, to your point, right? I think you've copied me on your materials, and they're fantastic. They're tremendously helpful, informative. It's good stuff. So thank you for
Good.
that.
Great. Okay.
Janice, I have one question actually,
Sure.
just in terms of what you're hearing from the small businesses in town. Are they eagerly looking forward to perhaps another PPP, or do they feel like, they can make it until perhaps there is some kind of resolution to the pandemic?
I think in general, they think they can make it. I think the PPP would give them more confidence that they can pull through. And I think their fear is that if things change for the worse, then it would probably be very difficult for them if they don't have any other type of financial assistance.
Okay, thank you.
I think the big fear is for all of us is that we have another lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
If we have another lockdown, all bets are off.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm saying the same thing from a different perspective. It seems like it all depends on where the virus is. As long as the virus is out of control, however, one defines that, there's tremendous uncertainty, and that makes it difficult to kind of project out. To the I think what you're telling us is, if a solution comes to the virus, whether that be vaccine, therapeutics, folks decide to mask up, social distance, and do what they need to do, our businesses are pretty confident that they can get through the next 3 months, 6 months.
Yeah, and I think what this pandemic has also forced them to do was to do things that maybe they were reluctant to do or didn't have the time to do. And so a lot of the businesses went online, which, is going to be a huge benefit for them in the long term. So, so I think obviously none of us want this to happen or to happen, but I think there's been a lot of things that these businesses have done that in the long term, if they can hang in there, will be better for their business.
Okay, one last call for questions. All right, not seeing any. Again, thank you very much,
Thank you.
Mike, Janice, for
Thank
the
you.
presentation.
Yeah, thanks for
Okay.
having us.
Thank you.
Be well. Stay safe.
You
Yep.
too.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
All right, next on the agenda, an update from the Board of Education in the form of Terry Yansky, I believe, on the 1% fund. I thought it made some sense to have Terry come and talk to us about the 1% fund. It came up in questions at some of the prior Board of Finance meetings, so thought this was a good opportunity for Terry to give us a little bit of background in the 1% fund, and perhaps also discuss this year's Board of Education recommendation. We won't vote on anything today with respect to that recommendation. Rather, in that regard, we'll wait to the meeting where Bob and Brad come to us with all the transfers. So this really was an opportunity for Terry to continue to inform us, to give us information to use in the process. So Terry, to you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for giving me this time to talk with all of you. I know that over time, we often have turnover on all our town boards, and it gets difficult for people to know the background, know the history to things that happened in years gone by. So the 1% account, that's what we lovingly refer to it as, it's really an unexpended education funds account. And it was established, the ability to establish such a fund was done by the Connecticut state statute. I don't remember exactly what year, but a few years prior to Bethel establishing one. The accounts have to be established by the financial authority of the town. So that would be you folks. And we did establish one back in fiscal year 13-14. At the time, Bill Kingston was the chair of the committee. So anyway, each year we look at what we have remaining, and over time, some portions go back to the general fund, and some portions of money have gone into the 1% account. It was established to be a place that we could go to for emergencies and opportunities. So during the year, I always keep the Board of Ed apprised as to where we are with the account. And as things arise, I talk to them about whether we're going to use those funds or not use those funds. And especially as we head into the close of each year, I give them a couple of updates over the months of closing the books, and it usually ends with them making a motion at some point to agree to put a portion of the funds or all of the remaining funds into the 1% account. So that's what happened here. So on September 17th, the Board of Ed met and made the motion to put the entire amount that was remaining from from 1920 fiscal year into the 1% account. Dion, can you move down to the next item? And then I took some time to give you all a full history of the transactions. There aren't many transactions because it's not something we use frequently. And I wanted you to see how for a few years it really had continued growth. You'll note that we did use it a few times mid-year when we thought we might need to go there. But in most of the instances, the deposit at the end of the year put more than, it replaced whatever we had taken out plus added growth to the account. In the year ending 2018, we did not put any money in because that was the year we had the reduction of ECS from the state, and we put freezes on hiring and freezes on spending just about anything. And we did return to the town that year $881,000 to fill the hole of the revenue that wasn't coming from the state. Obviously, no money went in that year. The one disbursement from the account that really did have an impact of reducing the balance that we had in the unexpended funds account was the boiler at the middle school. I think some of you may remember those discussions because right about the same time we needed both a chiller and a boiler at Bethel Middle School. And so we put this account on the table and said we could do one of them from this unexpended funds account. And so it was agreed at the time that we would take the boiler money from that, and then the chiller was paid from a town, either town general fund or town cap and non, wherever Bob felt best to go with funding the chiller. Then we come to this year. So last year was an extremely unusual year. Things really changed March 13th with our operations. And, you know, during the year, there were discussions as to things we thought we would need. I was much more comfortable with waiting and not rushing into to purchase technology, some technologies and things like that. And we knew we had this 1% account, so we decided to let it stay, let it fall through to at the end of the year. And then if COVID developed and we had other needs, which we've discussed at some other meetings, that would then be one available source to go to get us through 2021. So at this point, the proposal and the motion made by the Board of Ed is to deposit all of the funds that were remaining at the end of June 2020, and that amount is $385,834. The reason we call it the 1% account is when the statute was first passed by the legislature, you could put up to 1% of your operating budget in. You could not put more than that. And there was no cap from the state legislature. But in developing an agreement with the Board of Finance that to have such account, Bethel's Board of Finance was a bit more conservative, and they went with the idea of the 1%, but they put up a cap that the balance in the account could never exceed 2% of a operating budget. So we would stay within that parameter. We're in that parameter both for the deposit and for the balance that would be in the account. According to state statute, it was amended about 2 years ago, and it currently allows for 2% annually with no cap. And I think different towns use that funding in different ways and with different agreements between, say, their Board of Ed and their Board of Finance. But we've been very comfortable with this. We always talked about emergencies being things like if we had unanticipated special education costs, or if we had an opportunity to do a matching grant where it was 50 cents on the dollar with Bethel and we were getting funding from another source. So that would be helpful. It has been helpful. I think we've managed it well. I think it has felt good knowing the funds are there and we don't worry as much about special ed. We still manage our special ed dollars within our recurring operating budget well, and we haven't needed to go there. So I think that's a positive. Dion, can you go to the next? And then I don't know if the current members have read the agreement. So originally we took the state statute, we turned it into a bit of an agreement. Marty Lawler finalized it, and this is what is in place. So I really did think, after going back and reading this, that I should bring all of the current Board of Finance members up to speed as to the history of all the transactions and where we stand right now. And that's really it. And because I know our outside auditors, even though under number 2, the Board of Finance sort of forever gave the okay to do this, our outside auditors have every year requested that the Board of Finance actually make a motion to confirm putting the funds in. And so you would be asked to do that as part of when Bob Kozlowski brings you the final transfers and all of the fiscal year. So I wanted you to have all the background so that you could make an informed decision.
Thank you, Terry. Again, colleagues, questions for Terry?
Bob, could I just make a comment?
Please, Melanie.
I just wanted to say that when the motion was brought before the board, it was unanimously approved. Because not only do we have the uncertainties of COVID this year, but we have just general uncertainties sometimes in our operational budget, though we've been able to manage those, as Terry said. But if we got a number of special needs children who needed outside placements, that's several $100,000 that just goes, that we just have no control over. So we really have to have some, we believe, access to funds on a regular basis. And now throw in COVID and the uncertainties there, we're on really uncharted territory. So the board felt very strongly that this year of any year that we should be able to utilize those funds and put them into the unexpended funds account.
Thank you.
So Terry and Melanie, that it seems a little vague as to what is the appropriate use of the monies in this account. But I think you referred to it's the intent was for some unexpected expenditure, something out of the norm of some size. But are there any other descriptions of when is appropriate to use these funds, or is it entirely up to the discussion of the Board of Education, or is there anything in the state statutes?
No, the state statute doesn't have any limitations. Here's the thing: you held the power to create it. You hold the power to take it away. We're certainly not looking to not treat this with a lot of conservative approach. And use it properly and stick to the spirit of why it was created. So I know back when there was a lot of discussion about possibly a turf field, I know at one of the meetings we talked about, well, there would need to be a study so that we would have good numbers as to what that would cost. And we agreed that we would take the funding for that out of the unexpended funds account. And as you can see, at the end of the year, we restored that plus more with what was left at the end of the year. So, and then also, I will tell you that after the third trip and fall claim that we had with our town and Board of Ed insurance company for things that were happening to some folks in front of Bethel Middle School, I just said, that's it. we can't have this any longer. There's too much exposure to the town. Get that whole thing fixed. And so it was the middle of the year, and I said, we'll go to the 1% account. And if we have the money at the end of the year, we'll put it back. But let's go there and let's get this taken care of and reduce the liability exposure for the town and the Board of Ed. So those types of discussions have come up. Obviously, the boiler was the one that really reduced the running balance in the account. And that, we had discussions about that. We are supposed to let you know how it's been used. And so I figured I would start from the beginning and give you a complete up-to-date as to how it's been used.
No, this is a great rundown, and we really appreciate it. It's just that my feeling is that we don't really understand the intent of it, and I think would restrict the Board of Education and the schools to always have to make a decision: is this an appropriate use or not? Because it's so vague. I mean, I think it would almost free up the use of it if there was a little bit more definition around it than this. I mean, right now it just looks like a rainy day account for some monumental need. The boilers obviously was an appropriate need, but there might be other needs which would be just as appropriate, but it's just undefined, and it's probably with some trepidation. Should we go into it? Should we not go into it? Should we keep it? It seems restrictive in terms of how best to use this account. And that's why I was looking to these instructions or to the senses. Is there any better definition as to appropriate use of the funds?
Well, it's not a bad idea to clarify that in a little more detail, because I was here when we developed it. I understood that I was supposed to honor the fact that we had this and definitely not use it for recurring operating expenses unless there was some type of real underlying need for it. The board was very appreciative of having this as a place to go if we had an emergency. It has served us well. We'd be very open to further discussions with you as to either further clarification or staying within the spirit for which it was developed.
Yeah, I think we've spoke about that element of this rather vague guidance that we have before us, and then the other were the dates and the obligation for reporting. Because honestly, I think we all knew about the boilers, and I know there was reference to the 1% account, but this is, in my time in the board, now going 3 years, this is the first time I've seen a actual report on this. And so obviously that's been a little willy-nilly in terms of adhering to these guidelines. And not a big thing, because it's certainly not misused, but it's just that if you have the obligation of oversight in terms of town funds, it's shame on the Board of Finance for not knowing a little bit more about this.
Well, we can further clarify those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think going forward, now that we see this, we can be a little bit more adherent to at least some of the timeframes, although some of the dates seem maybe not so workable, and some of the obligations, like what's the last one? It has to be reviewed by the Board of Finance and the Board of Education at the end of the year. I mean, there's no joint meeting ever between those two organizations. So right. It's a little odd how some of this is written. So it probably bears some thought as to how to make it a little bit more workable.
We're open to that for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point, Robert. We, to your point, it does kind of merit a review and maybe just a
little
rewrite.
updating. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I think, Robert, if I can add, Terry, you've always pretty much have come to the board when a decision had to be made to remove funds from the account. It wasn't something where you just decided to use the money willy-nilly. You know, we always had an idea what was going on.
Yeah, and maybe just needs to be more formalized.
So, yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, anything else for Terry or anything else on this subject matter?
So then when it comes to you to make a decision about the deposit, it'll come as part of Bob's full end of year overview on all the funds in the town. And you'll have the ability to make a decision at that point, which makes more sense.
Yeah, like in prior years, Terry, not that results were hardwired, right, but they were more predictable. This year, as we've heard from Janice and Mike and your introduction, right, it's just a year of tremendous uncertainty.
Mhm.
So we thought it best to make those decisions, the transfer decisions, the reallocation decisions, kind of holistically. So when Bob comes to us with the whole picture, we can make it
Agreed.
more
I
informed.
agree. Yep.
Okay, I think we can close this topic. So Terry, thank you very much. Melanie, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you
You're
very
welcome.
much.
Good night.
Night.
Good night now. The next agenda topic is the update of the section 10.9 salaries. This is on the agenda, if you recall, because in our July meeting, we introduced the topic. We talked about there being uncertainty, that we did not want to make a decision at that point, given all the uncertainty. I think some of the board members had a question as to what the mechanic would be to make sure this topic just didn't get lost. That mechanic was my commitment to bring this up again in the next quarter. What my suggestion is to the board is that we defer it another quarter at this time, right? There's still the same level of uncertainty. We still have a lot of open questions, and it still seems a bit either premature or inappropriate at this time to be talking about salaries for the first select, the selects, and the treasurer. Any thoughts, comments?
I certainly agree. It would be inappropriate at this point in time to make any upward adjustments to these salaries. So we don't want to shirk the obligation to keep these in front of us and be aware of them, but the timing is not good to consider any increases. So I'm happy to defer this for another quarter at least.
Dee, Karen?
I agree. I think it's a tough time to give raises when there's so much uncertainty and so much unemployment, frankly, right now. So I would say we wait.
Yeah, I agree. Let's wait and hope things are better in another quarter.
Okay. Alrighty. That's it for this topic. Again, I'll make the same commitment so that this doesn't get lost to bring it up next quarter. Final topic, comptroller's report. So over to Bob and to Brad.
Okay. Are they going to put I guess it's coming up. Jan, you're going to? All right. So that first schedule that I prepare for the report is the revenue. And the first item there, the general tax revenue, the dollars are coming in very well. In fact, talking to Ann Scacco, the tax collector, we're up about 1% over last year. So we're roughly at 38% right now. Last year, we're in the range of 37. So that's good news. And on top of that, all the deferrals that took place back in April, those which represented about $125,000, they're down to approximately $8,000 at this point. So most of it has been paid off. And then moving down along the schedule, you've got the different sources of revenue, and there's a couple of items that I want to bring out that we're experiencing some problems. Park and Rec, they really haven't been able to do the programs that they had planned to do. We had budgeted $640,000 in revenue. And so far, we have 53 that has been posted to the account. But talking to Eileen, she just started within the last, well, I think it was the first week in October, the before and after school programs. And that represents about 25 to 30,000 a month in revenue. And as long as things stay the way they are right now, that's going to, start to increase the revenue that she had originally budgeted for. And if things stay well right now for the springtime going into the early summer, she's expecting to start to run the different camps and the summer programs. And her expected amount at this point is approximately $445,000. So out of the 640, we might be looking at about 195,000 deficit in that account. Another account that's, it's obvious because interest income is down next to nothing. We budgeted $500,000 for interest income. So far, the outlook looks like we're going to be down about 300,000 at the end of the year. So, that's unless the economy changes for the worse, so to speak, where interest rates start to rise, I think we're going to be in that range, somewhere around $300,000 shortfall. There's two smaller accounts. The senior center is one. They just opened up last week or the week before. She has no idea what she can expect. I mean, she's charging now $4 for a program, but at this point, they're only having maybe 6 or 7 seniors coming in. So, I mean, even though it was $3 before, now it's $4, that's not going to make that much of a difference. I did a little projection, and maybe we can get 25% of the 46 we budgeted. So we could be down like $35,000 in that account. And then an absolute right now is the Kermer distribution. We had, last year, we received approximately $70,000. We budgeted 65, but it came in at 29. So that number is solid at 35.7, which is a shortfall. But on the positive side, with the expenses, when you
Bob, I'm sorry, excuse me, just for a second, before we leave revenues.
Yep.
For tax revenues,
Mhm.
Was Ann's assessment inclusive of the taxes that were due the beginning of this month? Was she saying that the second payment has been coming in well?
Well, it's really too
soon.
early to
Okay.
understand that at this point. That 1% increase over last year is based on September 30th at this point, the first quarter.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, this month, we received the second quarter payments. She hasn't mentioned anything about any deferrals on this. In fact, you can't defer this. So if someone doesn't pay, they're going to be delinquent, and then the interest charge on that is 18%. So, but we'll know for sure, come November, how the revenue was collected during this month. And that's a good point, because this would really indicate where we're heading. And if we don't have any other problems with the virus going forward, then maybe we've weathered the storm so far. So,
Got it.
Yep.
Okay, well, we'll keep our fingers crossed until the November
Yep.
meeting.
And then moving on to the expenses, there's a couple of positive items. Dion, can you just bring up the next schedule? So in here, I just want to bring up probate court, like I've always mentioned before. It looks like we've almost gone through the bulk of the account, but we incur all the expenses for the court, and then we bill out to the other 3 towns that are involved in the court at the end of the year. So we get reimbursed for that. So that number is fine at this point. The only one, based on my calculations, that looks like it's out of whack, and it really isn't, is insurance, because we pay our insurance bills up front. And I brought this up in the past too. So that doesn't appear to be any issue at all. But the good thing is, on building and zoning is very busy at this point. So, and it really goes back to the revenue side. If we extrapolate out what they're doing right now, we potentially could have about a $260,000 surplus in the building and zoning permits. And then also in the recording, the town clerk, because there's so many closings going on, we budgeted 100,000. It looks like it could come in around 240. So when you look at all the revenue together, and the net effect could wind up being maybe 169, 170,000 shortfall, which is, it's very good considering the situation we've just went through. So looking at these expenses here, I don't see anything in there that's that pops out. Park and Rec still has some expenses. I mean, if you looked at the details behind this, they have program expenses of about, I think it's 74,000. But she did have some counselors that she kept on staff. They represent the greeters. If you come into the town hall, they have to check you out before you get into the building. There are other counselors that she put to work as far as cleaning the building, all the touch surfaces. They were going around cleaning doorknobs and handrails and everything else, and then going outside the building and doing other areas within the town. So that was about 49,000 of that number. And then they ran a little show last or 2 weeks ago on the front lawn, and there was some expenses for that. They generated a little revenue, but at least it got the kids to be able to do something and kept them busy, you know. So overall, I think, you know, I'm optimistic. I mean, hopefully things don't resurface, but I think we're going in the right direction at this point.
Could you tell me about the education maintenance fund? It looks like we've burned through about half of the budget. What exactly have we done on that?
You know, yeah, we've done 232. You know, like with us, there's probably a lot of service contracts that they have to pay up front.
Oh,
I didn't look into the details of that account, but I would guess that's where the numbers are going, you know, on that.
They also try to do more of their maintenance stuff over the summer while the kids are out of the building.
And that too. And then they probably, I don't know if she included in this account, which there's always adjustments at the end of the year, any expenses she had for COVID related type items.
okay.
So if there's no other further questions, I would pass it off to Brad, and he can give you a summary of the capital non-recurring account. These schedules here are just the details of the first two schedules, the remaining 13 sheets or 12 sheets.
You're on mute, Brad.
I'm looking for the capital non-recurring. Is that,
It would be a separate.
oh, did I download it twice? I think I downloaded yours.
It was Excel.
Yeah, if you don't mind, if you want to get started, I can get it real quick.
All right, I'm just gonna go through it quick. Before tonight, we had $132,000 of projects that were approved by the Board of Finance that have not been completed yet. There's $30,000 for the animal control building repairs, which was approved in 2012. That has not been done yet. The Public Works has been working with the state for the last couple of years, trying to figure out exactly what the state needs us to do to bring it up to their standards. I anticipate at some point there's going to be a call for more money. They're talking about $60,000 to $80,000 worth of repairs to the building. There's $65,000 that was approved for the highway sand shed. That was a project that the former Public Works Director was working on.
Brad, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, can you see that now?
Yes. Yep.
Is it up? Okay.
Yep. So the second item there is the sand shed, which was approved for $65,000. Bob Dibble is going to follow up with the contractor that was looking at that. That has been put to the side when the former Public Works Director left. So Bob Dibble and Tom Villa, the current Public Works Director, are going to start looking at that to see what needs to be done for that. The Ford F.
Brad,
Yep.
Brad, the amount for the animal control building repairs, does that now make us compliant to the state requirements for that building? Or are we still?
No. So the estimate that they had initially gotten from the contractor to bring it up to what the state wanted and just other fixes that need to be completed, it needs a roof, it needs other things, was $85,000. So the holdup there has been the town thinks that having an outside contractor do part of it and our maintenance guys doing part of it could bring it down. So that's why they haven't just moved forward with the 85. If they'd come back to the board and asked for the other 55, it probably would have been done. But they're trying not to spend good money that they didn't need to. So at some point, I anticipate in the next 6 to 12 months, they're going to come back and look for more money to complete that project. The initial $30,000 that was requested was before the state had gotten involved. It was just known items that needed to be fixed. And that was, like I said earlier, it was approved in 2012. We didn't kind of bring projects as shovel ready in the past. Now the board's philosophy has been bring stuff to me that's shovel ready. So they're going to try to get it to that point before they come and ask for more money.
Okay.
So Brad, but that 30,000 that is there would potentially go against the total of, let's call it $80,000. That's not allocated to some other fixes that are not included in the $80,000 number.
Correct. That 30,000 has always been allocated to that project, so it can be used to that. The board always has the ability to take back that improvement, but it doesn't seem prudent given that they are going to need additional money. So if it is 80,000, the Public Works would come back and ask for the balance of 50,000. Moving on to the Ford F-550, that was approved earlier this year. It's the patch truck. Just keep in mind that is just for the chassis. I know Bob Dibble is working on getting an updated quote for the body. He's saying it's around 43,000. So hopefully at the next Board of Finance meeting, that request will come through. Otherwise, he has a truck without a body. So unallocated balances is the next segment here. I lumped everything that was prior to 2020 into one group. That's 167,000. That is some money that was just never approved from those years. It's money that was approved, but we didn't need all of it. Like one of those items, the board approved 40,000-ish for a new truck. That was the one that caught fire. Our insurance carrier gave us $26,000 for it. So we had $26,000 left. So that would be in that. In 2019, the board approved an additional $500,000 at year end. 2020, there's still $373,546 that was never allocated, and the board has not yet touched the 2021 balance of $650,000. Typically, the board does not look to spend the current year CNR, the bulk of it at least, until we get closer to year end, because it's there in case things unfortunately break. Then the next item in here is the Park and Rec truck. Was the number in there was based on quote 3 of 4. Quote 4 that was approved earlier was less. So obviously that number will go down to the, I think it was 27,477 that was approved. You'll see the F450 body that I talked about earlier. And then we get to the items that was on, Dan, if you could just scroll up a little bit. Right there, so where it says remaining on capital list. These are just items that were on the capital list and not pushed out to the out year as part of the budget process. I'll just go through them quickly. Just stop me if you have any questions. In 2022, the assessor needs to do a full reval of the town. So usually from capital non-recurring, a couple years prior, we start trying to allocate some money towards it. The board doesn't need to make that motion at this time. We just kind of have to keep it in the back of our head that is coming. I think the last one full reval was 200,000, 220, something in that range. The police car, I rounded it to 40,000. That was the one that was taken out of the operating budget, and they were told to go get it from capital non-recurring after they purchased the two in their budget. School security will appear on here twice. The first is the 100,000 here. They had, if you remember, asked for 700,000 for school security improvements, split between 2021 and 2022. With everything going on COVID related, I spoke to Terry a couple months ago and reiterated today. At some point during 21, they're probably gonna ask for about 100,000 of it, and the rest will be pushed off to the out year. So that's why it's 100,000, not 350. Bleachers at the varsity softball field. Years ago, they had done an ADA study, and they found that well, I'll back up. I learned today that the varsity softball field is no longer at Johnson Field, Johnson School. It was moved to across from the baseball field 2 years ago. So they had made a couple improvements for ADA at the one at Johnson School. So they need to put in ADA approved bleachers at the current varsity softball field. The estimate there is 50,000. The buried downstairs adult bathroom. Terry's going to find out more information about this for us, but I believe that was, they're having issues with the piping and it's backing up. So there's going to have to, I believe they're going to have to be cut into concrete and dig up some piping. That's why it's so much money to fix one bathroom. The fire department radios. Both departments had been looking for radios. The selectmen during the budget process decided to lump it together at 200,000 apiece. I know Tom Galliford had gotten a quote for the 350 range. So that may come down a little bit. Hydraulic rams, South Street had 40,000 in their capital request. And then they had 108,000 for air packs. Then you have two lowboy trucks. These are in addition to the patch truck that the highway department's looking for. I think they're, I don't have it in front of me, but they're 15 to 20 years old each. Then he has a request for a plow truck for 195,000, a used mower for 48. We spoke to him earlier today about this, and that's going to be one of those things that when he could find one that's out there that'll fit his needs, it's going to be one of those things that he's just going to come to the board kind of quickly to try to get the money because he's going to buy a used one. I believe he said a new one's like 90,000. The Codfish Culvert is getting close to the point that they're going to be able to bid that out. That would be additional money to supplement what was already approved in the capital, not in capital non-recurring, to complete that project. Municipal Center HVAC repairs was in the capital plan for 47.5. The boiler at the Municipal Center replacement, years ago, we had replaced one of the two boilers at the Municipal Center with a high efficiency one. This is to replace the other one. They don't have updated quotes on this, but it is an issue that's out there. There's a request for a maintenance truck. This is for building maintenance to replace their oldest pickup truck. And then 17,000 for mechanic garage doors. And then here's the other 45,000 I put in here as a placeholder for the animal control building. The bottom list here are 4 things that can be pushed out at this point. I spoke to Eileen Earl earlier today. She said that Rourke and Parloa, although they need to be done, she can't see coming in asking for that money now with everything going on. So she agreed to push that out to an out year. The Municipal Center improvements, that's for the bathrooms in the front of the building. I think the public site building has their plate full with Johnson and Rockwell at this point. They have been working on it, but they have not bid that out yet. So at this point, we figured we could push that out. School security, this is the additional part that I spoke of earlier, that this with the 100,000 up top made the 350. And the last item is the in the municipal center, there's 2 elevators. They both have major issues. So this would be the 152,000 would be to modernize one of the 2 at this point. And then the following year, which would be 23, or even the following year after that, we'd look to be doing the other one. So, that is the full capital list at this time.
And Brad, thanks for that. Remember when Janice and Mike began their presentation, I mentioned that there are 4 kind of pillars of risk that this Board of Finance, working with the Finance Department, need to keep a very close eye on, right? Revenues is 1, expenses is the 2nd, capital items, so these things, are 3rd, and then fund balance. The fund balance kind of ties in with the rating agencies and our debt offerings, right, come next July. But those 4 things kind of all have to work in harmony. In addition to the capital non-recurring, right, if we look at Brad's numbers, one would assume that the money we have set aside is already accounted for. I think for us, and I would ask for the departments too, right, Bob, Brad, is that people shouldn't take it as a certain that if an item's on this list, it's going to get approved. Again, we need to look at revenues, expenses, how much of capital can come out of capital non-recurring. If we've got challenges in our revenues, so reduced revenues, we have more expenses. Capital non-recurring may be one of the places that we need to use kind of as a buffer. But all this stuff kind of comes together, and we can't look at one of those pillars without understanding all 4 of them. So I think this is a helpful discussion. We kind of now again have a sense for what people are thinking they may need. We'll just have to consider everything in a holistic way, again, given those 4 pillars and how they're interrelated.
Yeah, absolutely. And this list is, I will say everything on this list is a need from what I understand, but they're all varying levels of needs.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that's nice about the current process, that the Board of Selectmen approves an item on this list before it gets to the Board of Finance. It's nice having that 2 level to say, is this really a need? And how much of a need is it based on the current situation? And I think most people have an understanding of that. And some of it is how much of it is need based, and some of it is how much it is opportunity based. If Bob Dibble needs a used mower and he can get one at a really good price, that might jump up on the list, even though it's not an absolute need. So
Sure.
There are some opportunities here as well.
Yeah, and the flip side too, right? The challenge of what happens when the next plow truck busts up when Bob and the team are going down the street, and that's not on the list, or 2 of them break and Bob's only got 1 on the list. So again, it just needs to be managed in that kind of holistic way.
Yeah, I think the board's approach has been good. I think we just need to keep in mind that sometimes we can't wait for things to break. Like your example with a plow truck, if he breaks 2 plow trucks, that's 2 plow trucks that aren't on the road, and we can't just go to Ingersoll and buy a plow truck.
Yep. Yeah. And, I will, in the past, at least as long as I've been on the board, we tried to keep at least some capacity in capital non-recurring for the unexpected. Given how substantial our capital needs are, there really was a long period of time when capital needs were, I'll say ignored, but certainly, maybe pushed off. We do need to start whittling down that backlog. Unfortunately, in a COVID world, there's just some more challenges to face into. So very good. Thanks, Brad. I think it's been a long time since we've gone through this, and that was helpful.
Brad, this has been very helpful. And of course, you probably identify me as kind of a process person. So I'm always curious as to the process involved in how items hit this list and where the dollar amounts come from. Is this something that just the department heads come to the finance team and say, this is something we're need to think about in the future? Or what is the internal process?
So during the budget process, Bob, Matt, and myself meet with the department heads, and one of the things we talk about on top of their budget is their capital needs.
Mhm.
In the budget season, you get it's really a 10-year capital plan, but most of the items are in the next 1 to 5 years. So it's that list. And during the budget process, Bob and Matt meet, and they kind of discuss some needs. And that's where the list kind of gets made into a 1-year list. And most of these items were what was on the 1-year list. And the costs are usually there, depending on what it is. It's either from an estimate from a engineer, if it's like a culvert project, or a lowboy truck is mostly on state bid. And sometimes the smaller items, department heads can go to vendors they know and say, hey, can you give me a ballpark for this? And then, so the process from that start point, when it goes to the budget, if anything that's not addressed on the capital side, which the board has been pushing more things to capital non-recurring that are smaller dollar amounts, then the process is anything on this list, it would go to Matt directly. The department head would talk to Matt about their need, like Eileen did. And then Matt would decide whether or not he thinks it's pressing enough to bring to the Board of Selectmen. And then the Board of Selectmen decide whether or not they think it's pressing enough to bring to the Board of Finance.
So in general, most of these items have come up before us during the budgeting season and not necessarily throughout the year. I mean, other than my truck broke down and we need a new one. These are things that are thought up in terms of annual planning.
Yeah, Robert, those are items that have been scheduled out. We have the 10-year plan, although the last 4 or 5 years is just a placeholder to move certain things, but
Yeah.
Road construction is in there for 10 years. We have a certain amount of money in there. Whether or not we do the full amount, has to be seen. But, and lately what we've done is take it out of the capital plan and put it into the budget. But there's, at least for the next 2 or 3 years out, we've got items in there that, we may move from 21 to 22, like the elevators that we need to service, replace major components in them, or other, the Frank property, not the Frank property, but the Kowalski property up on Route 6. I mean, that's been in there since 2010 to redo the field, and it gets pushed out every year. It's out like 2 or 3 years, but it keeps getting pushed out. So you got items like that that are in this plan, and probably will never be done, but there is a schedule, and I think you might have seen it.
Oh, yeah.
It's one of those schedules that you really can't read because it's so small, but it's the 10-year capital plan.
And maybe to state the obvious, but to kind of build on the process point, Robert, right, these items are perhaps identified in the budget process to help us come to a capital non-recurring amount, but none of these are individually approved until as Bob and Brad have laid out, right, until the items are brought to the Board of Selectmen, approved there, and then brought to us for specific approval.
Mhm.
So Brad, the truck that we just approved for Eileen, I can't see further up on the list. I can't go back. So is that off the list or is it still on?
It was on the list at 35 something, if you just scroll up a little bit.
35,229.
Yeah, 35,229. So it was approved for, I believe, 27,477 tonight.
Okay.
So obviously that's $8,000 more that will be in there.
Okay, thank you.
So, and that would move, because it's approved tomorrow, I will move that to the allocated in progress. But we'll cut that check probably Thursday and pay for that truck right away and get it, which is what brought me to the earlier point of we try to do things now that are shovel ready. If you need a new truck that doesn't have to be built for 8 months, if you need a new truck that you can get right away, if you really need it, then let's get it right away.
All right. Thanks, Brad.
Yep.
Any more questions on capital non-recurring? Not hearing any, I believe that brings us to the end of our agenda and would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn this meeting.
I second that.
Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Unanimous. All right, everybody, thank you for the presentations. Thanks to the presenters. And thanks to all the members for being on, and stay safe. We'll talk to you again in